So, hey guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. With me, as always, Pascal, and on the other end, it is Steve Hall. We had a little bit of technical issues once again with Skype. That's why we have to do it here as well. But yeah, we get the work done, right, Steve?
Yeah, thankfully, I guess there is this backup in terms of Google Live, which is okay, but it's frustrating that it doesn't have the same capabilities as Skype. Split screens, just like, why not?
Totally. I don't know what Skype is doing with me at the moment. Always when we're doing the Improvement Season podcast, it's actually working up, but never at a different point in time. Okay, I'm not really using Skype that often, but it's just annoying.
It's making me a little bit worried because when I try and do podcasts with people, I just assume Skype's going to work. And if it doesn't, I'm just like, now we're going to have to use this Google Live thing.
But until now, it always worked out, right?
Pretty much, apart from when I tried to do the round tables with the guys and my computer couldn't record all the screens. It was like, no, too fast.
Shit. Steve, are you ill at the moment?
Yes. Can you hear me a little bit?
Yeah, kind of.
Yesterday was worse. I properly had like really deep, deep voice. It always happens to me. I kind of go to bed feeling like, oh, my throat feels a bit meh. And then in the night, I'm like swallowing and I'm like, oh, this is not nice. And it just makes my mouth very like, just like not a comfortable, good feeling. So fortunately, I can still just about talk and it's okay. But yeah, I guess there's never good timing to ill, but if there was ever a bad timing, it would probably be later within training cycles. So at least it's only week one.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you've just finished your deload, didn't you?
Yeah, really weird. Like finish the deload, get ill, and then like my back was twinging. That back twinge is actually gone since training, which is just weird. How it's just like, oh, now you're using these other muscles. Maybe it was just because they weren't being activated that kind of flared up. But yeah, just completed deload week one into this new mass. It's actually crazy to think, I'm like, oh, I actually have months of massing again. It's kind of exciting. And I know by the end, in like 3 months time, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to eat anymore, blah, blah, blah. But at the moment, the mini cut's done its job. I'm hungry. Doing a lot of the kind of changing a lot of my movements has helped a lot. Like in terms of my back, kind of feels like I deadlifted yesterday, even though I didn't deadlift. I think a large part of that is down to having done the chest supported plate loaded row, matrix row. It actually felt fantastic, which I never expected it to. And I haven't been using it, and not many people use it in my gym. I think people just don't use it right. So yeah, just coming into the first week and everything's going pretty smoothly. I'm really enjoying the AM and PM workouts again because they get tiring and kind of they get annoying after a while, but that's really going well. Enjoying doing straight leg deadlifts are feeling fantastic. They're really fun. But yeah, everything's going pretty swimmingly. The only thing that I think it's just my probably quad movements that aren't feeling that great. I'm going to see if I can put like plates, like bumper plates under my back when I do the leg press, so I get a bit of more range of motion on that leg press because it's like made for people with really long legs. People with really long legs. And then pause squats felt a bit off when I did them on Monday because of my back. But I think with the back issue out the way, they should start feeling good again.
No.
And something I'm going to do different probably this mesocycle is keep loads sometimes level week on week. Normally I like try and eke out like even if it's just 2.5 increases, but I might just add some reps and have a bit of a longer repetition range. I don't know why I'm saying that really. It's just something I'm going to trial.
Yeah. No, sounds good. It just made me think with the leg press. I always say that, but leg presses never seem to have worked for me. Maybe I've never found a really good proper machine that works for my anatomy. So I would really like to try out a vertical leg press, which I've never tried out myself. So something like that, for example, because I also know that the single leg press machine work wonders for me. So I'm just so surprised that normal leg presses like these 45-degree angles simply don't work at all for me. It just hurts in my joints. It is all that it does.
That's not good.
No. All right. I mean, and I've really tried a lot of times and not with too much weight on there. It never seemed to work for me.
Yeah, I think it's actually someone was talking to me, a client. I had a chat with him. He was like talking about Charlie, Mike's training partner, who can
Yeah.
leg press. He leg presses less than what he squats. And
Yeah.
my kind of consultation, he was saying how he actually leg presses more than he squats. And is that wrong? And I was like, well, actually, I end up leg pressing more than I squat. It depends on the machine, I think, in a large extent. If you've got good, like full range of motion, you're doing everything you can. Now, some leg presses are just really good and they kind of make it really hard to load it up. And I think they've got a particularly good one in their gym.
With Charlie, I said it, I reposted that post as well. And I said that these were the most beautiful leg presses I've ever seen in my entire life. And I stand by my words. These look just so smooth. And what was it, 800 pounds still?
Yeah, he's ridiculously strong. I can't wait to see him step on the bodybuilding stage.
A beautiful range of motion, full range of motion, power, control. It was just beautifully executed.
And it's good. It's a shame you don't have a leg press you can use, because it's nice because even Smith machine squats, hack squats, they're still somewhat axial loading, whereas leg presses you can actually just sit back and just go.
And by the way, with the single leg press machine, it's always a hassle to load them because you have to double load them basically, right? With both sides. Why? It just brings up an idea of mine. Why don't you create a leg press machine, so single leg press machine, where you only need to load once, but it applies to both sides? So it always just uses that side that is actually being activated. I don't know. Engineering. So if there's someone out there who's building some machines, which I hardly doubt that there's anyone listening like that, but if you know what to do now.
They're trying to sell more plates. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. Here, you know the gym, Dust Gym in Vienna. They are always building their own machines, or at least they create an idea, then they give it to someone who is actually able to create that.
So cool.
And yeah, it's absolutely amazing because these are bodybuilders and powerlifters themselves, and they know what they need and what they are looking for. And thus they can then directly say, okay, this is what the machine has to do. And not just like from a mechanical standpoint or theoretical standpoint, because I think that you see it all the time with those fancy gyms. You go in there, lots of machines, and half of them simply don't feel right. They don't, right? And it's just so nice to then have a gym like that, that they are creating basically their own machines due to their needs. It's absolutely amazing, and something like that would be so cool to have as well. Like, I don't know, have a gym environment where you have kind of a questionnaire for the people or participants or the members of the gym, and they can actually say like, okay, this is what I need, this is what we are looking for. And if the majority of the people are actually asking for something like that, build it. That would be so amazing, mate.
It'd be nuts. That would be
Oh.
And actually, we have to go to Vienna at some point. I've kind of joked and said, when I have, well, I say if I have a stag do at some point, it will be, I want my like best man to take me to Vienna and have like a massive session.
Oh man, today I was in the city, right? So I drove in the midst of Berlin because the cleaning lady was in our house. So I was just like, shit, I need to get out of the household because here today I simply don't have the power for that, to endure that, staying focused and concentrating while she is cleaning up the apartment. So I left the apartment to go out there. And then I was in that huge mall, and I don't know what's going on with me, but over the years, my life has changed so drastically. Back in the days when I was working in the music industry, I was constantly around people, right? Constantly. Maybe this also had a negative impact on me, but now I was sitting in that mall and I was just like, what is fucking wrong with people? I don't know. So maybe today I'm not in the best of moods. Could be that this is one of the impacts that I'm then seeing the world a little bit more negatively. But I just came to that with a stack do. I don't know if I'm ever going to do a stack do.
Well, your own one?
Yeah.
You'd be on mine though, so at least
Yeah.
you can come to one.
Yeah, totally.
I don't even know. I've never had that many friends. I'm just not someone who has like a huge like number of friends. So I could never, it's just never been, I just don't do well with like big groups. I like having a small number of people. Otherwise it's just like, oh, this is too much.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
get overwhelmed.
it was just like funny because with the stack too, it's just such a common thing to do, and I'm not saying that anything is wrong about that, but for me, I don't know, I just have a hard time enjoying occasions like these. Same goes for sitting there in the mall, watching around, seeing people how they interact with each other, what they are doing on a day-to-day basis, maybe, or walking around there. Of course, you only get a glimpse of their lives in that single moment. Could always be that it's the same principle as when someone is tooting their horn behind you in a car. You never know what's the reason for that. It could possibly be that he has his wife sitting on the back seat, injured or giving birth to a child, and that's why he's tooting his horn, right? And that not just because he just wants to annoy you or is pissed off. So you only get a glimpse of their lives in that giving moment. But I was just watching around and would be like, this is simply not for me anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting older. I don't know.
It's one of my favorite pastimes is people watching. Just sit in a cafe and just watch people. It's
absolutely.
fun.
It is super interesting to just observe. And that's not what I meant with that, but just like imagining doing this. And I was going to Subway to have lunch there, and that that salesperson or that waitress, I don't know, can you call her a waitress at Subway? That Subway sandwich server, yeah, she was so moody, so pissed off. So I was asking, like, okay, is the chicken fajita today the sub of the day? And there was a sign, but I wanted to be sure because they can make a mistake. It was early in the kind of midday. Maybe it was the sign from yesterday, and she was just giving me a snappy response, and everything was just like, holy shit. Sorry that I'm just asking. Sorry that you have like a bad day, or even that you hate your job, hate your life. Sorry for that. I can't do anything about that, right? It's just like, yeah.
I think I'd be so happy if I worked at Subway. Sounds like the best job ever.
Each and every single day at Sub. And you could always use your card. I don't know if you would be allowed to use your the scanner card to get a sub for free at some point.
Yeah, I have. They actually, those points rack up pretty quick. Like I've got a decent number of subs like free, I feel like.
Yeah. It is actually quite good.
I haven't been for quite a while. I need a sub. So how's everything been on your end apart from the annoyance of today?
Actually quite good, but I feel, and this is probably also contributing to my mood here today. So maybe I was just susceptible to everything that was going on here today because I'm just properly overreached. I can feel it. I had my so tomorrow's my last session. Yeah, it is my last session, week 4, and I'm already getting to the point of being overreached. I can truly feel that, but it was a really good mesocycle. Super happy with how things went, and yeah, I just need that dealer now. The fucked up thing though is due to the May seminar, so the London seminar. You guys know that 11th and 12th of May. If you don't have your tickets, go over and purchase them now. We still have some left. Because of that, and because we are going on holiday right after that, we are going on a farm. Yeah, just on a farm. So no gym is obviously around there. So this will be a week where I'm just taking complete time away from the gym, which is close to a year then that I did something like that the last time. The last time I did it was last year, end of July. So I think it's about time to do something like a kind of reactive recovery phase where it's just like, okay, walking around, doing a lot of activity outside, but not going to the gym. And of course, I can't hit the gym during that time. So I needed to pre-plan everything around that. And also at the same time, Katie is going to Magdeburg at the end of the month. And for 4 days, I think it is. And I don't have the car here. And everyone knows by now, or should be aware of, that the gym I'm working out at is quite far away. And right now I'm training 6 days per week. So it would mean that I have to get there with my bicycle, but it's 12 kilometers to get there and 12 kilometers to get back again, which is quite a long distance as a warm up and cool down again. And I don't really want to do that, but I have to. Now I have to squeeze it in somewhat, pre-plan. This deload will only be like 4 days completely out of the gym and then going back again. Because otherwise I can't make the next mesocycle productive and possible. And that's why I have to squeeze it all together, just take a couple of days completely away from the gym instead of doing like a proper deload or so. And then I take the entire week out of the gym, like in May. So we will see. Hopefully it's not going to bite myself in the ass afterwards, or in the meanwhile, getting injured along the way. Hopefully this won't happen, but you never know. Sometimes it's just like, you have to do it that way, right?
And what's the goal of the next? Is it maintenance or is it surplus now? Or
I would say still in a maintenance mode, because I would really just like to maintain here. Feeling better also during the summertime. It's not that I really care about. I mean, I'm not going to a beach or anything like that. I'm not walking around shirtless. So who really cares, right? It's just me, basically. But I don't really want to gain any kind of significant amount of weight. If a little bit of a body recomp is going on, I'm fine with that. And then I'm setting myself more so up for next year instead of now gaining and having to lose that at the beginning of the year, then next year again.
What's the plan after you come back from the active recovery?
Not entirely certain as of yet. Probably I have to do a little bit of a gaining phase just to make it more efficient with the time and not just like, sitting at maintenance for a month and then
gaining,
bro. Yeah, so yeah, totally. Lean gaining, right? So 0.1 kilograms per month, something like that. No, probably I have to do a little bit of a gaining phase to make proper use of my time, because otherwise, I'm not getting younger. Let's be real here. I mean, so I should maybe make use of that, but I have to decide because the kid is then actually coming. So Tony is being born probably in July or latest in August. And I have to, because I can't really predict how this is going to be like. I've never went through anything like that. Heard and experienced that with a lot of clients, but what that truly means, I have no idea really, right? With sleep deprivation and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be really positive, but also incredibly like stressful in some ways, I imagine. It'll take you a while to kind of get used to everything that's going on.
Yeah, and then I'm a proper father, mate.
Yeah.
So not just like non-biological, but really biologically. And then 2 boys at home.
I can remember what Mike, I can't remember how this came up, but I think it was to do with Mike and Crystal. And he said he knew Crystal was the one when he was as a girlfriend. He said something like, so I'm going to do some really stupid things with the gym. And like, it's always going to be a massive priority. If we have kids, if there's family occasions, I'm probably going to prioritize the gym in a bad way at these times or something along those lines. Oh. And Crystal was like, that's fine. And he was like, from that moment on, I knew she was the one.
I mean, Katie still needs to get used to my ambitions when it comes to the business and also with training. And I also had a discussion with her about that it wasn't like a negative discussion, but I don't expect her to understand and being able to relate where my ambitions lie, because I do imagine that it is and can be hard to relate, or being able to relate to something like that. Why on earth would you want to work 7 days per week? Why? if you have a family and all that kind of stuff, if you're making kind of decent money and stuff like that, right? Why on earth would you do that? And I can't really explain it. It's just like, because I have certain goals, I have certain ambitions, I have a certain vision, and this will not come just, or no one will ring at my door and be like, Pascal, you're a good dude. Here's everything you ever wanted and wished for, right? And you don't have to work for that anymore. That's not how life works. And I know that you have to put in the work and effort to actually make something happen. And if you don't, I know that I would so much regret that. And just because I have something that I love on one side doesn't mean that I have to just be or accept, I wouldn't call it mediocrity, but more so have to accept what I have right now. I still want to put in all the work and all the effort I can put towards that, while still, of course, taking care of the other things that are important to me. And I don't expect anyone else to understand, because in the end, it is my life to live. Even though that some other people are playing a role and part in my life, and I'm caring for them, I'm looking out for them, and I want to make everything right for them as well. At the same time, I need to live my own life as well and make it right for myself as well. And yeah.
You can always bring up the example of, why would you ever want to purposely starve yourself to such extreme levels,
Yeah.
step on stage for
Yeah.
the chance of winning a plastic, well, actually sometimes metal trophy?
Yeah.
And you might not even get one of those. It
No.
depends. Someone better might turn up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you can actually bring up so many different examples in life. If someone else doesn't have the passion or interest in a specific topic, it's just hard to relate to that. Or if the priorities are different ones, or if you've been raised differently in a different environment, and that's also why there's such a huge discrepancy between the generations. That's why parents always think that their generation had it better, or that it was a better time back then, because they grew up with these morals and ethics, and they identified with a certain way of living, and they identified with a certain way that is now becoming the only and true way for them to live their lives. And that's why generations always conflict with each other. Right? When your parents are saying, like, I don't know if it is truly the case with your parents, but everyone has heard of those guys who are saying, like, you have to learn something real, do a real job, instead of, like, I don't know, becoming an influencer or so, right? But it is because our parents, they've been raised in a different environment at a different time, different political state, with different priorities, morals, and ethics. And thus, these were the things they identified themselves with and they grew up with. And this is the reality for them. And that's why it's so hard then also to relate to what we are doing, with how we experienced the world and grew up in the world we are actually seeing and experiencing right now, right? And there will always be a discrepancy. And of course, then in our generations, there will be discrepancies as well, because everyone was growing up in a different environment and stuff.
I think it reminds me of kind of at school, prioritizing learning how to write with like a pen. And like you go from like having there's loads of different like ink pens, and it's like, who the hell writes with an ink pen anymore? Like, I mean, people write with biros, sure,
Yeah.
but typing is a better skill arguably to learn now for a child than writing. I think you want to learn how to write, kind of like you want to learn how to ride a bike, but it's just a funny how life is changing. And yeah, like online coaching when we were little was not even really a thing, and now it's like, so many people may even like just have an ambition once they're at a certain age to be an online coach.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. Shall we go to questions?
Yeah. Shall I ask the first one that I got that came through?
Yeah, do that.
Cool.
Do that.
So I think it's a bit long, and this is from Ryan Beaver, and he is getting a little bit of special thanks, I guess, because he is a Patreon supporter and he joined the email list too late, and so couldn't get his question through. But Patreon supporters' questions are prioritized. So if you want to have a question prioritized and you want to help us on Patreon or support us generally, then please do. Without further ado, I'll ask his question. So he said, "Hey guys, love the podcast and the whole team. I did a very small show last year when I was still learning so much. This year, I'm aiming for slightly bigger show. Last year, due to family events, I ended up front loading carbs my week of the show and don't think I did it correctly. What exactly is technique for front loading versus back loading peak week with carbs? This year, I was just going to slowly up carbs each day until maybe a day or two out. Feel free to save this for another cast, but another question. Okay, should we answer that first question?"
Yeah, too bad.
So
I mean, it's a perfect opportunity for you because I know that you've rewritten extensively the chapter for our upcoming ebook together with our guys from JPS, just about peaking. So I think, and also you gave a presentation, or you're giving a presentation on that as well. So I mean,
it's true.
Who better than you to answer that question? So go ahead, mate.
So peaking is, a lot of the time with peaking, it seems mysterious. It seems like it's really like a scary period of time, like front loading, back loading, linear loading, kind of what he's talking about there, slowly incrementally carbs. It's all essentially trying to achieve some basic principles. So what we're trying to do is essentially, the way I like to analogize it is towards filling a bucket. So we imagine our physique as if it's a bucket, and the water within that bucket is kind of like our muscles of the bucket, and the water within it is like the water and the glycogen. And as we're dieting, we're obviously very depleted. And we may well try and deplete even further within a peak week, so we can then super compensate and fill the bucket a little bit more than what we normally would be able to. Or we might decide to do a front load and then slowly taper and then refill at the end. Or we might do a back load and just try and fill it up to the top there. Or we might just slowly fill the bucket through the week. So essentially, when we're coming into peak week, about 1 week out, we're a fairly depleted bucket. Then we want to load with carbohydrates just enough so we've basically filled the bucket, filled the muscle, so that we have it all kind of intramuscular, nothing subcutaneous, so that we're presenting the fullest muscle and it's going to look its best. So that's how I'd always analogize it. So the difference between front loading, back loading, kind of linear loading through the week is just the rate at which, or the way we fill the bucket. And it's going to depend on the person, on what you're trying to achieve. A lot of the time, if you're not ready in time, it might be worth trying to do a backload because you still need those days of dieting. Or you realize, actually, I respond really well to a certain number of carbohydrates, and I practice this during like a diet break or through a refeed. And 2 days after you've loaded on carbs, you look particularly good. So then you can use that. Or you might decide to do a front load, which maybe you haven't had time to practice. And so you're like, right, I'm going to take myself up to what should be a decent amount of carbohydrates, get me nice and full, maybe spill over slightly. So then you need to just kind of dry up some of the water out of the bucket and kind of burn some of it off through depletion through the week. Just get back into a diet and maybe you top it off towards the end. So at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. It can get quite complicated because people ignore water, ignore sodium, ignore potassium, or they just don't think about it enough. And people try and deplete it so that they can kind of get rid of any chance of having subcutaneous water retention, which is really, really difficult to do. So I like a lot of people to keep many things in a vacuum so that we know what we're playing with. And that is just carbohydrates, and then drink to thirst, and make sure you're having plenty of sodium within your diet so that everything works how it should, because the body's very good at homeostasis and it will make things work how you want it to. So hopefully that's kind of answered the question. But I go into a ton of depth within the book, and then also within JPS Mentorship. And also I will be in Bath on the 14th, Sunday, the 14th of July. So yeah, we'll be doing that as well.
Cool. No, absolutely brilliantly answered. So I don't have anything else to add there. So should we jump over to the next one then?
Yeah. Shall I ask his second question?
Do you want to?
Yeah. Okay. Let's get it. So he has asked, question, general pop and muscle retention. I was told early on not to do anything other than very low intensities of cardio. However, with Gen Pop, is muscle loss even and at issue, say gentlemen with 20% body fat scared to jog? Will that really have any grand effect? No bodybuilding goals, just wants to look good. Alternatively, someone like me, under 10% body fat, preparing for a show, I prefer to do moderate intensity, 20 to 30 minutes, rather than slow, steady for 45 to 60 minutes. Should I go for easier and longer, or is shorter and moderate fine? Thanks again for the awesome guests and content.
So I think you have to split it up, and well, I would like to split it up in two ways, and that is first of what's the appropriate way of doing cardio. I think overall, when it comes to physique goals, it's always less. That's just my opinion, because when you're doing something like HIIT, then you can always make the argument, which we've done a couple of times already in the past, of, okay, if you have the capacity of recovering from HIIT and you have the energy availability for that, why aren't you doing that? Or why aren't you putting that energy and volume availability towards your resistance training, right? And then filling the rest up with cardio, because cardio isn't there for cardiovascular work, but it's more like just for additional energy expenditure when physique is your goal. It isn't primarily there to get your stamina up or your work capacity. This is not the time to do so. This is something that if you are struggling with, I don't know, I have a client right now, shout out to Z, my man. His work capacity, we've discussed things at the moment, and possibly we are going to incorporate a little bit of cardio, because he has a hard time recovering in a single session between the sets already, and his work output of volume isn't really that high. So maybe in such a situation, you want to consider throwing in cardio for actually cardiovascular work. However, this is then most of the time reserved in an off season or in a time of a surplus, so that the possible risk of muscle loss is even more so reduced. When it then comes to the second part of the question, is muscle loss even a true thing? And this is something where I actually had a question to Mike as well. So Mike Israel about that, because as far as I know, and when I looked into the scientific literature, because I have the question as well, how likely is true muscle loss? And I'm speaking about true muscle loss, that actually atrophy, that we are losing like the size of the muscle fibers, and not just coming from water or glycogen or something like that, so the diameter or the volume of the muscle fibers, but the true muscle loss. And I'm not as convinced when it comes to seeing true muscle loss actually happening. And especially when we're taking a look at scientific studies that are out there that are looking at muscle loss, it is either in people who aren't doing any kind of what type of resistance training, who aren't really taking care of their nutrition, especially when it comes to something like sleep deprivation. People in a chronic sleep deprived state, yes, they are losing a significant amount of muscle mass when they are dieting. But most of the time, these studies have looked at people who weren't really doing any kind of resistance training. Thus, it was always in favor of those people who were getting in better sleep. I would be curious to see then, okay, how would it change the ratio between fat loss to resistance training and people who are actually taking care of the sufficient amount of protein intake, who are then doing resistance training? How would that then actually correlate with each other? I would still assume that probably it's not as good as the group who is getting sufficient amount of sleep, sure, but is true muscle loss even happening there? Because we also have case studies out there of bodybuilding case studies. Yes, case studies is always just one single guy or so, right? That where we've seen natural bodybuilders actually gaining muscle tissue in a contest prep scenario, right? Sure, we also have a couple of case studies. I don't even know. I think Eric Trexler's lab or so, like 3 case studies.
Peter Fitchen. He loses so much muscle.
Yeah. Where we've seen like DEXA scans or so, I think it was, right? Of muscle loss. But of course, once again, then you have the case studies that showed an increase in muscle mass, and then you have case studies such as Peter Fitchens where you see a decrease, right? So yeah, all in all, I'm not, as far as the scientific literature goes at the moment, I'm not as convinced that true muscle loss is truly a thing that you need to be worried about. And this is something where Mike and I then actually agreed with each other, that if you're not going to super extreme levels of leanness, if you're not doing stupid shit such as sleep deprivation, you're not getting a sufficient amount of protein, etc., I don't think that muscle loss is any of, or should be any of your concern or our concern. This is, I don't know, there definitely needs to be more studies on that one. And I don't think that we are going to see that for a really, really long time, because you have to look at so many variables at the same time, such as sleep, stress, extreme levels of leanness, people who are actually resistance trainees, people who are getting in sufficient amount of proteins still, etc., etc. So many variables that actually needed to be taken care of, that in some cases of scientific literature at the moment show muscle loss, but then other variables weren't in check, which then brings these studies for our context in question, and not they aren't really as valid for our interpretation and for our purposes, I would say.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with saying that basically, so long as you're not doing any stupid and you're abiding by the general recommendations for fat loss, kind of almost anything that you're doing within that context is probably fine. Like, you're getting sufficient protein, your performance is good, you're trying to kind of progressively overload, you're not sleep deprived, you're not super stressed. And if you were sleep deprived and super stressed, probably performance would go down and all these other things. So it'd be very obvious quite immediately if you're losing muscle. So yeah, I agree with that. And I think that covers the question really nicely.
Yeah. Just on another note, though, I think that when you are pushing to extreme levels, of course, the byproduct of that most of the time is actually sleep deprivation. So your sleep is suffering due to that. Your performance is going down, but this has most of the time just to do with the environment. So you don't have as many carbohydrates. You're not sleeping as well. Your body is most of the time in a sympathetic state, and because of those things, probably muscle loss is happening, because the performance can't be actually put or stayed similar, or you can't really hold your performance there. So the question that brings then up another question once again, with all the variables I was talking about. If you would be able to hold on to your performance while still going into those lean levels, would you be able then to retain muscle mass, right? So yeah, so many questions. And that's why I'm at the moment absolutely not convinced that true muscle loss should be any concern of the majority of the people.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's, yeah, I think I saw someone on Instagram getting kind of into a bit of a disagreement where someone was like, there's no way during a contest prep you should be losing any performance, any strength. And the guy was like, hang on, that seems a bit ridiculous. And you just mentioned so many reasons why the majority of people do lose a bit of performance and strength towards the end, because you are getting to extreme levels of body fat. And maybe there's the handful of people who are genetically set up to be able to survive at that low body fat percentage, or they've really designed their prep really well towards the end. They're almost like in a reverse diet, or they're losing barely anything. But not many people can get themselves to that stage. But it does lead credence to then, towards the end of your prep, you want to be losing minimal amounts so that you have as much as you can give towards performance for retaining as much muscle as possible.
And also, when it comes to being competitive, especially, I mean, the level nowadays is just insane. Sometimes you then have to consider the trade-offs, but also then the benefits of that. So if you know that you're storing a little bit more fat at a certain body part, right? With the trade-off of going into an aggressive deficit or pushing even further, and by that losing some size at a certain body part, make up for that with the conditioning you are gaining from that. Sometimes it is absolutely worth it. So this is also something that has to be taken into consideration. That so if you are losing size, hopefully it comes with a benefit of actually conditioning also.
Yeah, it's crazy how, for me, particularly my quads, they look reasonable towards a certain stage. And then for them to truly get peeled and stage ready, I have to lose so much size on them, it feels like. But like you said, like shredded glutes is like, if you don't have those, you almost don't belong on stage. It's almost like everyone has them now. So you just have to take it to that next level.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So let's move on to the first of our listener questions, and that is Mila. Mila's a regular listener. I know that. I think she is living in Korea, but maybe also Japan. I'm not entirely certain. Mila,
Asia.
Yeah, tell that to me in the comment section. You know, we are always the ones talking. So yeah, Mila asks, when during a mesocycle, would you think it is best to mini cut? So when during a mesocycle would you think it is best to mini cut? Sorry, it was poorly phrased or written out by me. I read out. Sorry about it. I usually start out with higher volumes and go on to lower volumes, but higher intensities as the mesocycle progresses. I guess power lifters are similar in that regard. I.e., I do Olympic weightlifting. Your content is the best. Oh, thank you very much. So, how would you set up a mesocycle when you are doing a mini cut? That's the question that is asked, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Should I go?
Yeah, go ahead, mate.
Cool. So thank you very much, Mia. Appreciate it. And sorry that you don't talk to me. You can find me on, come into my DMs over on Instagram. So for the mini cut, something I like to do, and I think is kind of makes good sense in a phase potentiated kind of off season for physique competitors. Weightlifters, it might be a bit different. For powerlifters, potentially different, but I think the same principles probably apply. It makes the rationale, a lot of people see mini cuts as just a period of time to cut body fat. And that's all they see it as. That's literally the only reason that people attack mini cuts. There is also the question of, and which you brought up, how to train. And a lot of the people just assume, oh, I train during the mini cut just like I would when I'm in a massing phase. And that's not completely wrong, but there's something about a mini cut that is beneficial in the fact that it is only 3 to 6 weeks. And it's short, sharp, and you come right out and you're going back into massing. And therefore, by training a bit lower with your volumes and not being so assertive, you manage to hopefully resensitize yourself somewhat to the training that you've been doing, in that as we train with higher volumes for longer periods of time, we see some adaptive resistance build up, in that we see kind of a slow transition towards slower muscle fiber types. We also see kind of a buildup of AMP kinase, downregulation of mTOR, these sort of things. I don't know these inside out. This is me regurgitating from the mini cut manual by Renaissance Periodization. But I felt this. You'll feel this through downregulation in pumps. You won't get sore as much. You'll just find you're not getting as much out of training. You also potentially are feeling a little bit like niggles here or there. And psychologically, it just sucks. Also, during a mini cut, it's really hard to push training volume. So a great thing that I like to do with people is take them to their minimum effective volume that they normally would train at for like a massing mesocycle, and then stick at that. Don't progress number of sets. So don't move towards MAV and MRV. Just let it come at you through increases in reps, increases in volume, load, sorry. And because you're in such a big deficit anyway, you probably can't really increase the amount of volume you can do anyway. So you're kind of by default at this point. And then you just go through the 3 to 6 weeks and hopefully have somewhat resensitized yourself to training volumes. And so the way I'd set that up is, again, minimum effective volume. I would bring down your repetition ranges. So focusing on maybe 6 to 8 repetitions, going up to 12 for some body parts where appropriate, and then just moving through it like that, and then come out and raise your volumes again as you normally would. Now you're a bit more sensitive to that, and you'll just find probably that your pumps are a little bit better and these sort of things. So that's the way I would go about setting it up.
No, that was nice, mate. You have a really good day here today with explaining everything, being like really precise.
I think it's because I've been writing recently a lot, and I'm very excited about one of the things that I'm writing about. I think it's going to be invaluable to a lot of the listeners. I'm super excited for it. Like I want to tell everyone what it is, but I think it's beneficial for us to keep it under wraps because
Yes, absolutely.
we want to be the first to put it out there.
Yeah. And now that someone else is now bringing that one out and we are again standing there. Shit. No, cool. I mean, if you want, we can head over to the next question.
Yeah.
Because it's a really interesting question, and I would like to hear your take on that one. So it is from Alex. Alex says, hey guys, what would be the ratio or percentage of carbohydrates that you recommend coming from fruit? I mean, obviously, it's better than potatoes, pasta, or rice for being high on glucose than fruit, because they have great proportions of fructose, which isn't the main fuel for muscle. And there's less capacity for storage fructose on the body than glucose. It is an interesting topic and important for knowledge, at least for me. Thanks, guys. So basically, just to sum it up and reiterate what he was asking, what's the recommended percentage or ratio we are recommending coming from fruit when it comes to the overall carbohydrate intake?
So you want me to go first?
I mean, I could go first, but
I don't mind.
So first things first, when it comes to that, I have the feeling that you think that something is special about the fructose, especially when you are saying like, obviously, it was phrased a little bit poorly. Sorry to actually say that, but it said, I mean, obviously, it's better potatoes, pasta, or rice. I couldn't really understand what he was referring to that much, but there was clearly a comparison between carbohydrate sources, what's better and what's not. And there's something inherently wrong, in my opinion, about comparing certain macros or macro sources with each other, because inherently nothing is better or worse. There are just certain type of foods that are more beneficial for your overall goal to, I don't know, achieve or make it easier for you than others. I mean, highly mineral and vitamin dense foods, so whole foods, are probably, when you have a lower caloric intake, are probably better to consume to actually hit your minimum mineral and vitamin targets for the day while still staying in your overall caloric range, right? And also at the same time keeping you sane, keeping you full, keeping you satiated, all that kind of stuff. So there are certain foods that just make your life easier when it comes to that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that something is better than the other. So when it then comes to the fruit, I know, because I don't know whether this is actually what you were asking there, whether there's some special trait about fructose that it's not being stored and thus it's just like empty energy, which is not necessarily the case, because the body is quite good at actually making use of substrates, especially also when it comes to fructose. It can be stored in the liver and it can actually be broken down. We got some enzymes for that. And when it then comes to fructose in it for itself, there's nothing really that special about that. I know that there's a fallacy out there that people at some point were saying that you should avoid eating even fruits, which is something I would recommend not listening to, because the benefits of fruit are so much higher than the cons, if there are even some cons to that. Especially like the amounts of fructose that you would have to, or the amounts of fruits that you would have to consume to actually hit your total amount of fructose intake that can be stored in the liver, is so high that you would get sick before you actually can eat that much fruit in one particular day, right? So
sounds like a challenge.
It sounds like a challenge. Yeah, I don't know if you want
Mike biceps and banter if he's listening.
I think I heard once, I don't know the exact number, but I heard once, I think it was like 20 bananas And I would then assume that you are running into other mineral issues such as super high potassium intake, which can be quite detrimental health wise.
And shitting.
And shitting, yeah. And just having super hard stomach cramps overall. And being sick and tired of bananas, which is not cool because bananas taste amazing, before you're running into somewhat of any kind of issue there. But so just to give a little bit of an answer here from my end before us making a lot of assumptions, what is a good percentage wise or ratio coming from carbohydrates from fruits? I think so. A general rule of thumb I always have is to have like 1 to 2 to 3 portions per every 1,000 calories that you're consuming, and then you should be good there in that range, right? I mean, sometimes it's easier to have a higher intake when you are someone who tends to be a little bit hungrier all the time. You have somewhat of a sweet tooth, and you can't really get or eat something like sweets because it's just too high calorically dense, for example. Someone like me, I just like fruits as well, and I can't get away with just eating highly palatable foods because they don't satiate me, and thus I then tend to just eat more calories over the entirety of the day than my allowance is for myself, right? And thus I stick with fruits because I know that they have so many benefits to them, minerally, vitamally. Is that even a word? Minerally and vitamally?
It is now.
Yeah, with their minerals and vitamins, and overall also fiber and all that kind of stuff. There are just so many benefits to that, and I have the feeling that I'm just rambling and I don't get to the point. So I just throw it over now to Steve and let him talk about that.
Dear Pascal, what fruits do you normally eat on a daily basis?
How many and what?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know what it is, but I do love pears at the moment. Eat a lot of pears, eat a lot of plums as well. What else? Watermelon is finally on the market again. I don't know what it is, but in the summertime, I could just like eat a half a watermelon and just so I always talk about my weird habits when it comes to foods and eating. Now is another one. So here it is, guys. You know the deal with potatoes and quark, and I've heard of many people that it is amazing, the combination, right? I know that. You can thank me later. And here's another one. So if you want to, it's really hot outside. So go out to a supermarket, buy an entire watermelon and cut it in half in the middle. Take a long spoon, and then cut out like small pieces. And then you can just spoon the entire thing. Amazing. It's like a yogurt then. Like, not from the consistency, but I mean, like you are treating it like a bowl, right? Like a bowl of cereals or so. It's amazing. It's amazing. And
to be fair to you, I don't think that's so weird.
No, but I mean, yeah, this is something I do like. Yeah, but right now, mostly pears and plums, and what else did I have here? And some strawberries at the moment, because they are finally on the market again, something like that, right? I mean,
nice. Yeah, I think you answered the question really well. I thought we'd just give some context. Yeah, I actually do. Okay. You, in a roundabout way, when someone asks this sort of question, I'm a little bit, and I don't like to use it because in some ways I think being detail orientated is great and I love it. And I am very detail oriented, but sometimes I think people take it too far and they have the principles in place. They follow a minimally processed diet. They know fruit's really good for them. And that should almost be enough. The chances of you over consuming fructose through fruit is very unlikely. Fruit is not 100% fructose. There are some fruits that are higher in it, but it's never the ability to eat sufficient excess fructose. I think it was Broderick talked about it, and I think he has the numbers somewhere. If you want to go and ask Broderick, I think he knows. But I think you'd end up just shitting your pants like before you can get insufficient fructose to cause yourself a problem. Only if you're like high carb massing and you're on like 600 grams of carbs or plus, and getting all of it from fruit, do I think you'd start having a problem. And I think then you'd have toilet issues before it became a problem for actually filling up liver glycogen and then being kind of not used in the way you want it to. So for these people, focus on what Pascal said, focus on minimally processed foods, 2 to 3 or 1 to 3 portions of fruit per 1,000 calories. I think we kind of say 2 to 4 portions per 1,000 calories of fruit and veg combined. I think that's generally a good recommendation. So yeah, I think you covered it really well. And the problem with fructose is normally from other sources. So like using fructose in like sugary drinks, whatever it might be, rather than from fruit itself. Like you said, fruit, I don't like anyone ever demonizing it. I don't think that's a good thing to be doing.
No, absolutely. There was one thing I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. So, with being meticulous and thinking about stuff like that, I really do appreciate that, to be honest, because I did it myself. I still do it every once in a while, that there are questions popping up that I simply don't have the answer to. And sometimes when I then really think about it, I'm just thinking about details that are not really worth considering or worrying about. But that doesn't mean that you don't want the answer or that the answer isn't worth it, because that's just education, right? And thus, I totally appreciate that, Alex, you are asking such a question. And I also have the feeling that it is kind of the same graph when it comes to the Dunning-Kruger effect, but more so when it comes to consuming knowledge. It's not about the that you are too confident in your knowledge or so, but it is kind of the same graph. So what I mean by that, it's at least something that I see with a lot of people or experience with myself all the time. When I get into a topic that interests me, I want to consume everything. So basically it spikes up, right? I'm consuming a lot of information, and then it dips down just a little bit, even more and more and more, kind of in a logarithmic kind of fashion, up to the point where it's just there's nothing to consume anymore of information, because basically you've covered it all. You dug into, I don't want to call it the research, because that requires a lot of work actually to dig into that, but you covered most of the sources that are out there, right? But in the beginning, it's just like, okay, I want to know everything, and thus you can't still decipher what is actually worth looking into and what's not, and what's actually worth considering and worrying about and what's not. And this is something that comes over time. And this is something I'm guilty for myself. Sometimes I'm forgetting about how far we've actually come already. We've been doing that for years now, and we've been doing that on a day-to-day basis, answering questions of like clients and also online, right? That we are so easy to forget that maybe like 6-7 years ago, we were asking like the same questions, we're worrying about the same stuff as well, or kind of similar stuff, whereas just like everyone starts somewhere, and we are more so the minority that we know already a decent amount. Our small niche, our small community, and this is also the reason why I'm so much a proponent of that we should work together as a small minority, and that is now I would refer to that evidence-based community, instead of bashing their heads in that community, gathering together and try to spread the word, because only then we are able to actually spread the word, instead of having a ring fight where only us are in the ring, instead of like having the entire stadium or having it streamed online so that the entire world can look on. There's no value in that, having an intellectual bash or so. Right? You don't help people with that. The only thing that has helped is possibly your ego.
I think that's a good point, and it's true. It's kind of what I worry, and I think I've got a personal bias here. Is I think you may have the same with me, Pascal, where I was definitely one of these people as well. I've worked with a lot of clients who are too detail oriented almost, and where they know almost too much, and it holds them back from just doing it, and it stresses them out. They almost know too much, and it stresses them out. And I think in some circumstances, just knowing enough is better than knowing even more than enough, because then you know too much and you end up just not doing the stuff that actually works. And it's just finding that fine balance between the two, because eventually you do what works long enough so then you can delve into the specifics. But if you start with specifics and don't actually ever practice, that's where it holds people back.
Mate, and I got a good one for that. And that is, so yesterday, someone, let me just find it really quickly. Over on YouTube, someone commented on a video that was, if the golden era of bodybuilders would have been worried about all this crap, there would have been no bodybuilding. And he got a point. I didn't answer like that, right? I said like, yeah, maybe, because you could always bring the counter argument of, okay, maybe they could have seen better results then. And that is holds still true to the top IFBB guys. They're still doing a lot of bro-ish kind of shit, right? Maybe they would even get better results. Who knows, right? You can never turn back time and just try the different path. It's not possible. It's not a video game or so where you can die and then just try the different road. That's not possible. So, but he got a point in that sometimes ignorance is bliss. And you see it all the time in life, that some people simply don't have the education, but they have the willpower and they have the willingness to put in the work and effort that is required to get a long way. And that long way is already like in nearly all of, I just need to think about that. Not that I'm saying anything stupid now. And nearly everything in life, you need to put in the work and effort, and then education comes along with that, or education and experience comes along with that, right? Sometimes it will not catch up with the work and effort you're putting in there. We see it all the time as well, right? Especially when the results come. But sometimes ignorance is just bliss, and sometimes it would be better, or you would be better off to just focus on the fundamentals and just putting in the fucking work instead of thinking about like, okay, is it now better to have like 35 grams of protein or the 30 grams of protein because of muscle protein synthesis? I heard, right? I mean, come on, these are just minute details where it's just like we are splitting hairs here. And especially this is unfortunately the case, and I'm a little bit biased, such as you as well, that we are in that niche of the evidence-based industry, that people are sometimes too clever and smart for their own goods. It's just a matter of fact that they are overthinking stuff, and that holds them back big time. That they are missing the forest for the trees, that they are not putting just in the let's just put it in bros terms, go hard in the gym and fucking put in the work, right? Where it's just like, I better go to only area of 3, and all of a sudden it was just an area of 6 because they were too worried about really pushing it, right? So there is also a point there, I think. Mm-hmm. And this is what I was saying, like with the educational curve, that you are consuming so much information and you simply don't have the experience and knowledge to then decipher already what's worth worrying about, and thus you're putting everything on the same level. Whereas, of course, it's not the case. Having the fundamentals in check, hitting your overall calories is probably more important than the ratio and timing of the one single piece of fruit you're eating on that day.
Yeah. No, I think a good side discussion. And I have 200 grams of frozen berries in the morning. I eat 1 banana and 1 kiwi a day at the moment. That's pretty much my fruit intake.
So basically, should we close this episode? Because we never kind of do a summary of the episode. And I don't think that this will be the one thing as well. But what I would really like doing, and this is something where I have to give credit to many people out there that just are putting in the work and effort, who are sometimes, yes, I have to admit that as well, disregarding the science that is out there, which I sometimes don't really find that cool, because that is just the fact, and facts don't care about their emotions, basically. But at the same time, they are putting in the work and effort. So for many of our listeners out there, I want you to go out next week and really just start putting more work and effort in. And if you're already doing that, then, I mean, you can ignore me now. But this is something I would really wish more and more people do. And this is something I applied for myself. So this isn't just being picked out of thin air, where it's just like, you have to do that. But I did it myself, and I changed a lot about my training and my approach over the past 1 to 2 to 3 years. A lot.
It's continual learning. Like within the gym, it's ever getting better at your craft.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
I think we've been basically an hour. I don't even know how long this has been. Yeah. It doesn't tell us.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. I think we already plugged the Bath seminar, which, we'd love to see more great faces there. And you can ask me loads of questions about peak week, and you can ask Pascal loads of questions, and Jacob and Lyndon, which is going to be fun. They'll also be on the podcast at some time in the future, which will be fun. And then, the one in May is coming very, very shortly. It's like really soon now.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cheers, guys.
Did you want me to, or was I supposed to say something? So goodbye, you guys.